about it, think 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 about it.
What's up, family? This is your man, not your boy, Go Black to Africa. Peace and blessing to all my brothers and sisters that are out there in the struggle, but yet trying to overcome and try to advance into a life that is beyond those who are trying to hold you back. Listen to this right here. You know, Kenya is coming out with a digital ID program. That's right, something as crazy as that, because Bill Gates is the one who's behind it and backing it. Check this video out and I'll be back.
Now, it even gets worse. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is continuing its global push to support its so-called government-backed digital ID programs, and this time setting its sight on Kenya, where it will advise the government on that country's Maisha Namba digital ID initiative that is currently under development. So, according to a Kenyan news agency, Gates' role is assisting the Kenyan government in its development, and the rollout of Maisha Namba was announced after a recent series of the closed-door meetings with Kenyan President William Ruto. According to Biometric Update, Maisha Namba is supposedly expected to address different challenges, such as identifying and authenticating citizens, safeguarding primary registration documents such as birth certificates and national identity cards, and improving the management of the social programs and government operations. The project has been met with skepticism in some parts of the country. Rights groups have also been expressing concern over the possibility of discrimination and the erosion of privacy. But listen, I just told you in a very nice way. Now let me just put it blatantly to you. The program targets the birth of new babies. So once you have your baby, before your baby leaves the hospital, you no longer get a paper birth certificate, but then you get a digital one that is somehow implanted somewhere on somebody's body. Think about that, but have a listen to this.
The digital ID, which has been a big problem to us for a very long time, is now on a testing mode for the next 2 months. I have been assured by all the stakeholders, led by the ministries concerned, that by December, we will be able to launch digital ID, where every Kenyan don't have to carry any paper, plastic or otherwise, as an ID, that they should be able to be identified digitally using their iris or their fingerprints, and we can transact without the necessity of people struggling to identify who they are. And the proudest part of it is that we don't have to spend the billions that we have spent on all the other manenos, as all of you know.
We're taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein.
Kenya is in serious trouble. Now, for you to accept this, that means you're going to be completely surveilled and controlled. Think about it. So they have targeted the new babies, of course, even the ordinary citizens, the grown-ups, the young ones, the teenagers, and even the elderly ones will receive this digital ID. But they will then create a new generation where they'll be completely under this digital ID and they have no choice.
What do you think? Let me say this right here. Let me put it blatantly or bluntly. You know, people say, well, what's the big deal, Go Black? I mean, hey, it's a digital ID. People don't have IDs. They're antiquated when it comes to their so-called technology, and just a quick way of identifying people. Au contraire, brothers and sisters. You see, I have an advantage that most people do, because I have the so-called a mindset. Because I was in damn Erica, put the D in front of America, capitalize the E, damn Erica, for majority of my life. I've served 20 years in the military, served in the intelligence and other commands that were there in the military. And I understand the way that they think. Yes, that's right. So when you talk about anytime a Western world wants to do anything with black folks, you know it's something that they're trying to advance for their own common good, not yours. So what is it? Well, we know that he says, the President Ruto says in Kenya, oh, you know, it'd be Irish, you know, or fingerprint identification. Well, yes, that sounds innocent as much as we may believe. Of course, we have to use fingerprints, you know, when we have to get visas coming into other countries. And some of you all who work in high security places may even have to use your eyes to enter in. But what is the downfall or the cons behind the very thing that you might think is so innocent? Well, Bill Gates said they shoot an identity ID within the baby. You know, we know that the so-called Bible or the conspiracy theorists who are out here are talking about, you know, the so-called Antichrist will be the chip taking on the 666 image of the evil one, if you will. But let's go further than that. You know, when you really think about it, putting a chip in someone, we know is an identity that you just can't remove. It's there, it will always be there. But what if you decide that you just don't want to be identified? Matter of fact, what goes on that identification? What is on there that would be so interesting that Bill Gates and others would want to retrieve if something happens to you? Let me give you a scenario. Let's just say, because there are those out there who've already made mention that the melanin in our skin is highly desirable for the sake of many of them maintaining a youth. But let's go to the next place of this. You know, I had to do some research and find out what is the child's birth rate per year in Kenya. To my amazement, it's 1.2 million children born per year. Now, you had to look up the so-called neonatal mortality rate, or the children that die. It's 3.36%. Now, you might say, oh, 3% of baby deaths out of 1.2 million? That doesn't seem like a lot anyway. Oh, yes, it is. That's 40,300 and something children that die a year, and that's just Kenya. Can you imagine if on this ID that it has, of course, the genetic or the DNA genetic code for each individual baby? Of course, we know they're going to have the blood type. We're going to have all the different types of where many people who are going to want to have so-called, you know, your organs, transplants and things, which is high on the scale for sales around the world, would be a great idea when you don't have to retrieve paperwork and finding out what is this baby's makeup. And so the baby could easily be sold when you go ahead and quickly identify by hitting the so-called barcode on that child, and then turn around and cast it around the world of what is for sale. You know, we already know that the evil exists around this world. And we know the Western worlds have run tests on many of Africans, hence HIV that has been spread throughout the continent of Africa by those who had their own evil agendas in trying to deplete the population in Africa. I don't know when they're going to wake up. We don't die, we multiply. But they also in America have done programs, St. Louis, Missouri, that they drove around in 1973, spraying in the communities, trying to find out. St. Louis in 1973, where they drove around and sprayed toxin illuminants to see whether or not what the effects would be upon a black people for the military's so-called advancements in biological warfare, or the Tuskegee Airmen, where these black men were suffering with syphilis and they had the so-called cure, and then they just used them as lab rats to follow along for 20, 30, 40 years to see what the effects are, only for their own selfish gain. Or when you talk about when it was the drugs, you know, whether it was the heroin, whether it was other psychedelic drugs that they have given to prisoners We saw that there was a documentary done of black people that were in the prisons, that they had made promises that if they go ahead through these so-called tests, they could benefit. And only to find out years later, these tests they put them under basically caused them psychotic. Many died early on. You see, we're always the test bed of many of these countries and nations, and I'm tired of these African leaders who think that everybody's their friend, that they can go ahead and have confidence that they're out for the good of the people. You see, Africa, y'all need us who come from the Western world, because apparently, somehow, some way, many of you all are fooled. And President Ruto, I'm surprised at you. But you did say it in your statement, stakeholders. You see, this is all about money, family. This is all about greed. Because everybody stands the chance to make money except for those poor children who will be inoculated with daggone a chip or some identification. So that then if something happens while they're through their infancy stage, their adolescent stage, they can just go ahead and find the information and then sell them off. Now you say that I'm crazy. Check the history of these evil people who go around the world making billions of dollars off the backs of us. Well, family, that's all I got to say. But, you know, it's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to think about it. Because if you don't, you and yours will be a sucker to those who are waiting by the wayside to reap millions off of you. This is your man, not your boy. Go black to Africa.
Think about it.